Daddy Cool coming over this way. And from the looks of things, he doesn't seem to be a happy camper. Wow! What's he doing? And Diesel is... obviously with something to say. He left the arena at the Survivor Series.
A lot of people are probably wondering where Big Daddy Cool's head's at right now.
I'd like to know.
You know, I thought about it, and I thought maybe I'd come out here and apologize for what I did to Brett and for what I did to all my dear fans.
Who needs them?
I don't think so.
Oh.
You know, last night when I went back to my hotel room, I wondered if I'd be able to get any sleep. For the first time in a year, I slept like a baby. When I woke up this morning and I looked in the mirror, you know what I saw? I saw a smile on my face. It's the first time I saw myself smile in a year. Because I saw myself, not some corporate puppet that you decided to create, Vince. No.
Oh.
You missed the ball on this one, baby. You missed the ball. After I won the title, 24 hours later, I'm up in Titan Tower with the marketing suits, the merchandising suits. Hey, Diesel, we need you to smile a little bit. We need you to be a little bit more politically correct, a little bit more corporate. Well, baby, what you saw last night was the tip of the iceberg. Big Daddy Cool's back. That same guy you saw in Providence at the Royal Rumble a couple of years ago. The only thing that matters to me right now is my family, my friends. That includes you, Shawn Michaels. And I'm not saying something. I'm not saying I'm not going to smack hands, but it better have a black glove on it, baby, because I know you're with me. Whether you like me, love me, or hate me, hey, that's the way it's gonna be. I'm back.
Big Daddy Cool Diesel. With a rather candid interruption, I think you would have to say.
So that was Big Daddy Cool Diesel, aka Kevin Nash, at the end of 1995. That was 30 years ago. 1995 was 30 years ago. And Diesel, at the end of 1995, cut that promo, which I see as a way to erase and move on from what was the worst year, what's widely regarded as the worst year in the history of the WWF post-Hulkamania, post-WrestleMania. And I don't know what the WWE was like in 1980, 81, 82, 83. And I don't think anybody listening to this will have a strong opinion on it. Most of us will have an idea, though, what the WWE was like in 85, 86, 87, 88, 89, 90. We can make a comment on almost every year since that time. And looking at the big picture, looking at the 40-year sample size, looking at WWE from 85 to 2025, 1995 for me stands out as the worst year. Although it has to be said, this is somewhat retrospective criticism, because as a 12-year-old at the time in 1995, I did not have the same opinion. Whilst I did realise that 1995 wasn't as good as 94, and then 1996 went on to better 1995, and 1995 was to me the worst year that I had watched. When I look back on it, I did not feel that I was watching a poor product in 1995. And that was due to A, being a 12-year-old, and B, just being happy to watch WWE, WWF for the 2 hours that we got at the time. We got Superstars, we got Monday Night Raw, I even watched some of the highlight shows. That was such a small amount of content to digest compared to now that you really looked forward to it. And whilst there were better shows and there were worse shows, obviously, you just wanted to watch the WWF then because you looked so forward to it that you didn't have a negative opinion no matter what they did. And whilst I did prefer 94 and 96, and this was the worst year sandwiched in between, I was not complaining at the time, and I did not look forward to the product coming on. It was not a chore to watch like it is here in 2025. And this was a really poor year for the company. And that particular promo by Kevin Nash felt like WWE were erasing that mistake, erasing the things that they tried, erasing the run of Diesel where they tried to position him as the number one face of the company, the top baby face and the face of the company. It was his job to carry the company and main event these pay-per-views, although he did not main event the big one. That was WrestleMania 11, main evented by LT versus Bam Bam. And that was a celebrity-fueled WrestleMania. It was nauseating how much they put the superstars on the back burner and used the celebrities as the primary focus to sell it. Much like the WWE are doing nowadays. WrestleMania 11 back then felt the same very much as a lot of the events that WWE do now. When you watch Raw on Netflix, you are made to look at and acknowledge these nobody celebrities who have shows on Netflix. You are the shows are littered with advertisements and sponsors. We even shoehorned in a spot this week on SmackDown where they needed to use the Slim Jim table because Slim Jim have paid for sponsorship and they want as much visibility as possible. Back then, you only had to deal with what was a very poor celebrity-filled WrestleMania, and the whole year was filled with poor judgment. But at the same time, WWE, WWF were running out of money. That's why we saw a Royal Rumble at the start of the year littered with nobodies. That's probably why they reduced it down to a minute, because they didn't really want to showcase these people for long. It was the year where Shawn Michaels and Bulldog started the Rumble, and they finished the Rumble as well with Shawn Michaels coming out on top at the end, going from one to the end. But it was only a 30-minute Rumble with 60-second intervals because the ring was filled with nobodies, because WWF were losing money at the time. That was their excuse at the time, and they desperately tried to remedy that by trying something different at that WrestleMania. But the year was very poor. Diesel's run did not work. He spoke then about reasons why it possibly didn't work. Made to smile, made to change his character. It was very much a corporate version of Kevin Nash. Fans didn't really seem to accept him on top. It was a very poor financial year. Diesel drew badly, but he was also up against poor opponents. Towards the end of his run, he's working with Waylon Mercy, who I thought was a great character, but obviously Dan Spivey was at the end of his career at the time. Mabel was the King of the Ring winner. This was massively rejected. We had Bret Hart feuding with pirates and dentists, and with Bob Backlund in horrible matches. And overall, 1995 was definitely a year to forget. But as I said, you didn't notice it. And as I said, the WWF were desperate and struggling at the time. The year before, Vince McMahon was very much expected to go to jail, and Jerry Jarrett was expected to be running the company, and none of that happened. And WWF was still in recovery mode, whilst at the same time, Turner was getting more deeply involved in the wrestling business, and we saw WCW get serious and launch Nitro in September 95, beginning those Monday Night Wars, which WCW began to win in 1996 the following year, even though, as I said, 96 was a far better year than 95. And 2 years later, in my opinion, in 1997, we would have the best year in WWF history. So, why am I comparing 1995 to 2025? Well, given the resources that WWE have now, given the talent that they have, given the money that they have, given the fact that they are now backed by TKO, given the mass expectations that were attached to this company with this monumental deal that they signed with Netflix, I can make an argument that this now is the worst year in the history of the WWE, WWF. And whilst the talent is far better than 1995, whilst the matches are better than 1995, whilst the stories are better than 1995, even though there is a significant lack of them, even though I do find myself bored all of the time watching these shows, even though at times it feels like a chore to even get through Raw and SmackDown, and I seem to be watching them in separate intervals. Even now, as I'm recording this show, I still have to watch the second half of yesterday's SmackDown. You would still say that the product overall is better. But when you look at the weight of expectation and the expectations that you had going into years that you may tag as bad, 93, 95, 2018, 19, 20, all for me, poor years for the company, the expectation was not at the level that it was going into 2025, which was supposed to be the biggest year in the history of the WWE. WWE is certainly valued higher than it's ever been before. But when you look at what they've produced compared to what expectation was, this for me is the year that has undelivered more than any other, therefore putting it in contention as the worst year ever due to the sheer disappointment of it, including a very, very lackluster WrestleMania. As I said on my reviews of it, it was a very, very lackluster night one, saved by a main event. And then we had a decent night two, killed by the main event. And that comes from mainly the power struggle between Paul Levesque and Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, one of many problems that TKO are now having to deal with. Now, obviously, everything was nice and rosy when they took over the company, managed to get rid of the evil Vince McMahon, but they were also carrying over a lot of goodwill, a lot of good stories, particularly the Bloodline, which was carrying creative. Triple H managed to manage that successfully. I felt his first 18 months of his tenure were decent. But now we are seeing Triple H's creative. We are seeing Triple H's storyline. And it's fair to say that nobody is overly impressed by what we're seeing. And whilst the crowds are still coming out and they're still buying tickets, we still have to deal with the fact that we are paying way, way over the odds to attend these events. And whilst the creative is not at the level that it was last year or the year before, and whilst we are constantly seeing these continuous complaints about the prices, it's only a matter of time before this TKO bubble bursts. And that's something they drastically cannot afford to happen, given the fact that we have learned recently about the way that TKO managed to purchase this company. And it's not a surprise to me that Vince McMahon on the side continues to sell his shares, dropping his ownership down to just 3%, selling a further 250 million TKO shares recently. And what we've learned now is the WWE's parent company, TKO, is drowning in a debt of $3 billion. $3 billion, meaning that according to financial reports, TKO Group Holdings and the merger of WWF and UFC is currently carrying a $3 billion debt, making it the most indebted and financially overhedged company in the history of professional wrestling. Now, this is ironic because WWE loyalists have painted AEW as a vanity project for many years, which it is, propped up by Tony Khan's millionaire's backing. But WWE right now under TKO is the very definition of a corporate shell loaded with liabilities. And TKO, they want to get their money back. They want to get themselves out of the red and into the black, which is why we're seeing this company whore itself out continuously. WWE did a story where The Rock was trying to buy Cody Rhodes' soul, but it's the WWE who sold their soul to TKO, and TKO is trying to sell everything it possibly can whilst cutting costs immeasurably on the side, which recently led to the dismissal of R-Truth, whether it be the dismissal, whether it be his release, as he painted it as, or whether it be just not renewing a contract. My understanding, it was not renewing a contract, and my understanding is what they offered him was 1/7 of what R-Truth was currently being paid. And that's the way things are going to be moving forward. Do not be surprised if Roman Reigns does not renew. There are some stories out there saying they're trying to cut Roman Reigns' $15 million deal. Roman Reigns doesn't have a $15 million deal. Roman Reigns has a $5 million deal. And Roman Reigns wants to continue on with his $5 million deal, but he wants to do even less dates for the company. And that is the contentious issue at the moment, with Roman Reigns' deal up just after WrestleMania 2026, which is next year. So Roman Reigns has less than 1 year left on his deal. Roman Reigns, as things stand, is 10 months away from leaving the WWE. There is no sign of TKO re-signing that deal, especially not what Roman wants, which is to do the same money for less dates than he currently has on his existing deal. So the shit really does look like it's about to hit the fan. The plan seems to be to build new stars and to pay them as little as possible whilst getting the old stars off the books who they deem to be being overpaid. And stars who are on those $1 million deals or $750 deals that are no longer a massively usable asset to the company. So for someone, for example, like The Miz, is probably likely to receive his marching orders very soon, unless he is willing to take a massive pay cut like R-Truth and drift into an ambassadorial role within the company.
I am going to ruin wrestling for every fan, for every wrestler, for everyone. At WrestleMania, I make history by winning a 17th championship. And I finally force you to forget the name of the fun machine, jet flying, woo, Ric Flair. You will forever say the name John Cena.
So we are in the midst of one of the biggest blown stories and turns, if not the biggest, in the history of wrestling, and it's all under the watch of Triple H. But Triple H, whilst he isn't fully to blame, he isn't blameless either. Let me tell you why he's not fully to blame, and something that I've said over on the Wrestling Informer behind the paywall already. I gave the full story on The Rock, and I'll give you the just now. The Rock was not supposed to be involved with this year's WrestleMania. Once The Rock decided that he wasn't going to face Cody Rhodes, even though he set that up last year, there was an agreement that The Rock was going to pin Cody at last year's WrestleMania in the tag match. And then they would set up WrestleMania 41, where Cody Rhodes would pin The Rock. They would be tied at 1 pin each. And after The Rock was done with his film schedule, filming the live-action version of Moana, he would be free around about December, January time. He would return to WWE television. He would return in Saudi Arabia at the Royal Rumble, where they were going to pay massive money for The Rock to appear. And that is where The Rock would win the championship in Saudi Arabia to set up WrestleMania 42, where he would defend his championship against Roman Reigns. That was the plan. And suddenly The Rock decided to say that he wasn't available because he did not want to take that pinfall loss to Cody Rhodes. The Rock decided to say that it was best that he missed that WrestleMania and they made that WrestleMania about John Cena, and that he returned when he was supposed to have his match with Cody Rhodes and win his championship in Saudi Arabia at the Royal Rumble. But it doesn't work that way for Triple H. It didn't work that way for Triple H because if The Rock wasn't going to take the loss to Cody and tie this up at 1-1, Triple H didn't want The Rock going 2-0 against his champion and going on to still face Roman Reigns. So WWE made a significant shift in plans. They took The Rock's advice that it should be about John Cena and instead came up with a heel turn idea for John Cena to turn at the biggest show of shows. The heel turn was supposed to happen at WrestleMania 41, and it wasn't supposed to be fuck all to do with The Rock, and it wasn't supposed to be anything to do with Travis Scott because The Rock took himself out of the equation. Despite numerous attempts to lure him back in by Nick Khan and by Triple H coming up with ideas, including a triple threat match, which is what the three finger thing meant by The Rock. He was supposed to change it to a triple threat match so The Rock didn't have to be as prepared as he was for WrestleMania 40, so he didn't have to carry that workload in that triple threat match. In the end, The Rock shut down all ideas and just said, listen, I'm not going to do WrestleMania 41. Let's make it about Cody Rhodes. Let me return and we'll pick up this feud later on down the line, meaning the only thing we would miss was Cody Rhodes getting to beat The Rock whilst The Rock would get to pin Cody Rhodes on 2 occasions. WWE completely flipped the script. They went in a different direction. They had a plan. Triple H had a plan, and it was to go with John Cena, but it was to turn John Cena in what would be a perfectly done heel turn, a massively memorable heel turn, and an unbelievable start to John Cena's heel run at the biggest show of all. We wouldn't be talking about the worst WrestleMania finish of all time, which is what we saw this year. Instead, we would be talking about one of the greatest WrestleMania finishes of all time, the John Cena heel turn. But that was taken away from us by The Rock. And The Rock also isn't fully to blame because those phone calls did come from Ari Emanuel and Nick Khan asking The Rock to return after The Rock had gone into business for himself, had completely written himself out of the storylines by what he did with his promo on Netflix, completely killed the Final Boss character, and then went on to NXT and absolutely rambled complete and utter nonsense because the guy is so oversensitive. He has such a massive ego. He's so immune to criticism that he had to go on to NXT and cut another promo, undoing what he did the night before. But ultimately, what he went out there to do was to take himself out of the picture. And that's exactly what he did. It was Ari Emanuel and Nick Khan who then reached out to The Rock themselves, saying, hey, ticket sales are down for both the Chamber and WrestleMania. The WWE needs you to be on the road to WrestleMania to help improve these ticket sales.
I got a call about a month before Elimination Chamber. I get a call from Ari Emanuel, who we know owns TKO. TKO owns WWE. He's been my longtime business partner and one of my best friends for over 20 years. He said, we need help at Elimination Chamber. Ticket sales are a little slow, but beyond that, he goes, what we are finding is with Elimination Chamber, it's become the pay-per-view that's been interesting. Fans have had fun, but it's also the conduit to WrestleMania. And how do we create a Elimination Chamber that people must tune in to see? How do we create that? And he goes, right now, we don't have that. And he said, will the Final Boss show up? I said, well, let me give it some thought and let me get back to you. So I gave it some thought. I got back to Ari. I got back to Triple H and Nick. We had a call. I said, I have an idea.
That idea ended up being the terrible soul idea. And The Rock actually wanted to take Cody Rhodes' soul. He wanted to change the WrestleMania plans, which he was let in on. He was told about the plans for John Cena to turn heel. The Rock decided that he wanted to tell this long-term story, this long gamer that he claims to be, this long-term story where he would try to convince Cody Rhodes to sell his soul. Eventually, Cody Rhodes would do it at WrestleMania 41. So it would be Cody that would be turning heel. That's what The Rock wanted. And eventually, Cody Rhodes would become power hungry and it would reach a point where he didn't need The Rock. Cody Rhodes would turn on The Rock and The Rock would be able to win the championship from Cody as a babyface, because that's what The Rock wants to be. He no longer wants to be the final boss. When The Rock came to the WWE initially, when he signed with TKO, when he got his $30 million and part of the company, when he got his shares, The Rock was in trouble in Hollywood. Ballers was done. Black Adam was a failure. The Rock had had a number of poor movies that hadn't done well, and he needed the WWE. Suddenly, The Rock got himself in bed with Disney. Suddenly, Moana was a success. The Moana live-action movie looks like it will be a success, and The Rock's career was back on track. And therefore, he no longer wanted to be the final boss whilst at the same time being involved in Disney movies. Because, as always with The Rock, Hollywood comes first. And ultimately, this is a selfish piece of shit. And he will always put himself first. So, it didn't matter what WWE storylines were. The WWE doesn't matter to him at all, seemingly. So, The Rock decided that he didn't want to be the final boss. He initially took himself off television completely because he didn't want to lose to Cody. He said, let's make it about Cena. Let me return and win my match against Cody. Then when WWE moved in a different direction, The Rock then came back with this sole idea, but he solely wanted it to be Cody Rhodes who turned. He wanted Cody Rhodes to become power hungry. He wanted Cody Rhodes to later on down the line turn on The Rock, and The Rock could be the savior who defeated Cody Rhodes. That was the storyline pitch of The Rock. And for the second year in a row, The Rock was told no by Triple H and the creative team of the WWE. And for the second year in a row, Nick Khan and Ari Emanuel were forced to back Triple H's plan. Now, last year, The Rock relinquished. Last year, The Rock gave up on his idea to face his cousin Roman Reigns, and we decided to go down the direction of the final boss and later on set up Cody Rhodes and Rock down the line, and also we would get Roman Reigns versus The Rock the following WrestleMania. So 2 years of stories were laid out instead. And that's where we suddenly had The Rock claiming to be a long gamer. I'm a long gamer. Why don't you just wait and see where we're going with this? Well, you're the one who wanted to come in immediately and do yourself against Roman Reigns with no build. The long gamer bullshit just came afterwards when the fans rejected it and started to campaign for Cody Rhodes. The Rock always has his own version of events, and they're usually not true. So whilst The Rock isn't blameless because Ari Emanuel and Nick Khan called him, they need to take their portion of the blame. The Rock is to blame for the fact that he decided that if he was going to be at Elimination Chamber and they were insisting on John Cena turning, it needed to be at the Elimination Chamber because he wasn't going to come in and do a nothing appearance where ultimately Cody Rhodes just told him no. So he said John Cena needed to tell him yes. Unfortunately, Ari Emanuel and Nick Khan, after saying no to The Rock so many times, felt like they had to concede something. They felt like they had to give The Rock something, and they also felt like that it would aid the build to WrestleMania, and this was a fight that Triple H couldn't win. So Triple H is blameless and handcuffed up until the point, but he's not blameless for not coming up for the better finish and giving us the absolute shit that we saw at WrestleMania 41. He's also not blameless for the build to WrestleMania, where it was continually teased that The Rock and Travis Scott were aligned with John Cena, they would be there. Or at least it wasn't addressed by John Cena that The Rock wouldn't be there. Whatever way you want to look at it, however you slice it, everybody is equally to blame, and it still leaves us in the same shitty situation where this John Cena heel turn is absolutely underwhelming. And Cena's got to carry his portion of the blame as well, because I don't think he's been fantastic, given the fact that we have waited 20 years for this, and John Cena said that he's constantly wanted to do it and constantly had ideas for it. You would think he would bring something a lot better to the table. You would think this would be something that would be carrying the company now in its first year on Netflix, and it would make for compelling television. Now, in Cena's defense, whether his segments are good or not, he is not aided by anything that's going on the side. And again, that comes down to Triple H and the creative team, who are failing to fill 5 hours a week. That's what they have to do. 5 hours a week of compelling television, which is exactly not the position I thought we would be in when WWE signed this mega deal with Netflix. Whilst I wasn't expecting a return to the Attitude Era, I was expecting License to do a lot more and therefore to tell compelling stories, much like the WWE have done a much better job than AEW in doing in the last 3 or 4 years, which has led to why WWE has grown so massively and why TKO came in the first place. But now we're seeing what Triple H can really do, and it doesn't look like it's much, because on a week-to-week basis, we are fed match after match after match that's happening for no reason, and stars are not being created.
Let's talk about how awesome it is that Logan Paul just won it. Let's talk about, Sam, let's talk about what Logan Paul represents. The shortcut. Feels so good to be here. Feels so good to be in the business. Thinking about all of the funerals that I wasn't able to attend for the last 11 years in this business, all the holidays I missed. You know, I could have just started a YouTube channel, could have just jumped in there at AJ Styles. Feels really good, right? It's awesome. It's really good.
Do you guys know we have 25 years combined experience, and what are we doing on Mania?
Well, they know because they're normal human beings, and they actually love professional wrestling. But apparently that doesn't mean shit anymore. That doesn't mean shit. All I asked Alan to do was for once to not think about just himself. Think about everybody in the back and think about the professional wrestling fans. That's all I wanted him to do. Sometimes to do the right thing, you have to do the wrong thing. But he's a narcissist, and he had to do it his way. Hey, Alan, how many more WrestleManias do you have in your system? Probably, I don't know, one. Maybe this is the last one, and you just pissed that away. For what? For what? For your way? Thanks a lot, bud. I really appreciate it. You want to know what the best advice I ever got? It was from Bill Goldberg. 2021, back when I was in the Twilight Zone, you know what I mean? I'm wrestling for gasoline. It was awesome. Let me tell you all about it. Bill goes, hey, Cross, you know what? You remind me a lot of me. I go, I think we have different styles, Bill, but I really appreciate that. Do you have any advice for me? He goes, you know what? You just got to be a good soldier. A good soldier is what he said. So I decided to be a good soldier. You know what happened? They released me. And then I come back. You know what being a good soldier gets you, everybody here? Just so in case you're wondering, you want the back scoop here. Being a good soldier gets your times cut. Being a good soldier means that people come up to you and say, hey, you got any great ideas? Yeah, here it is from Charlotte. No. That's a little too great. We're looking just for good ideas. That's for those guys over there. That's what being a good soldier is, okay? Being a good soldier is coming to your hometown where you cut your teeth when you got started and not being on the card. It's all about viral moments now. That's what it's all about. Viral moments. Well, Guy, everybody's been telling me that I got to become undeniable. And as soon as it happens, they ignore it and they shut it down. I never asked to wrestle Randy. I never asked. That happened organically, and you ignored it for a viral moment. And good on Joe. Nothing against him. But you ignored it. And the crowd told you exactly how they felt about me on SmackDown when I was eliminated. And you ignored it. Become undeniable. My ass. My ass. You want a viral moment? On behalf of all of the true fans of professional wrestling, guy with the suit and tie in the truck, go fuck yourself. That's from Killer Cross. No. Fuck it.
So instead of getting this guy immediately on television and giving him a push, he looks fantastic. He has an incredible look. He's believable. He passes the airport test. He has a smoking wife who everybody wants to see. Everybody wants to see him. Instead of strapping a rocket to him, this guy still isn't on television under Triple H, and he still doesn't have a new deal. This guy could be gone in the summer, and this is someone that AEW should actually pick up and turn him into their own star, because this guy has a load of momentum online. He looks the part. He looks better than the guys that AEW push. He looks better than the guys that WWE push. Why are we not pushing him, but we're doing a all-Mexican feud on television? Why are we continuously doing the Judgment Day breakup? I don't care if you're doing that, but you got to put this guy on television first. And Triple H's failures, the list of his failures are far longer than his successes. I already don't like what he's doing with Rusev. I already don't like what he's doing with Aleister Black. Why is Aleister Black taking 15 minutes to beat The Miz on debut? Is that how you book things? That's how Tony Khan books things, and we give him shit for it. But Triple H is apparently exempt from that, but he's not anymore, because I don't like the way he's handled those two. I don't think anybody other than maybe Rhea Ripley and Dominic Mysterio and Jacob Fatu, they're the three main ones that I would highlight, are in a better position. The booking of and Jey Uso, obviously, of course, because he's on top as the champion, but I think that's largely down to him getting himself over. His brother's on a downward slide. I don't like what they've done with the Bloodline members since then. Roman Reigns has become completely irrelevant at this point, which is ridiculous to say, because when Roman Reigns was as advertised for TV while he was the champion, it was absolutely must-see. Roman Reigns being gone right now is barely noticeable. I don't think the booking of CM Punk has been particularly good. I think this Rollins faction, which doesn't even have a fucking name, has already lost momentum since the first week. And the list goes on and on and on. Even your Triple H guys like Finn Balor haven't benefited from Triple H being in charge. And the list is endless. Listen, I'm not on here to do this show to make lists. At the end of the day, the product isn't good. The product isn't watchable. This isn't going to last with these ticket sales at these prices. They aren't going to continue to ride the goodwill wave, which they had, which was primarily led by a fantastic Bloodline storyline, which probably may be the greatest story ever told. It's either that or the NWO, the greatest story in wrestling. It's either that or the NWO or Austin McMahon. But even Austin and McMahon and the NWO, you kept going back to it, you kept going back to it, you kept going back to it. You didn't know how to end it. For the Bloodline, I do feel that it had a clear ending, and we've drawn a line under it. We saw the end game finish at WrestleMania 40. That could have been the end, but they obviously continued on with the new Bloodline. Roman Reigns returned to feud against them. And I think the moment where we draw a line under that Bloodline storyline, which started in 2020, ended at the start of 2025 on Netflix, where Roman Reigns reclaimed the Ulafala and was presented it by The Rock. I also feel that drew a line under the possibility of seeing The Rock and Roman Reigns. I don't think we'll ever see that match. And frankly, I don't want to see The Rock tied to another WrestleMania anyway. I don't want to see this company relying on someone that's so unreliable whilst we're having this power struggle. And it does seem like The Rock wants Triple H to fail, and that's why he didn't turn up for WrestleMania. And Triple H is failing. He doesn't need The Rock's help to fail. There's got to be question marks about the fact that WWE are continuously outside of the top 5 for Netflix, and why they are continually drawing these poor numbers to the point where they have absolutely no chance for Netflix renewing for another 5 years and making this a 10-year deal. I wouldn't be surprised if Netflix are trying to get out of this deal now. And they should have learned from Fox, because Fox could have told them, despite the fact that nothing bad was really said when they parted ways, the Fox network knew that WWE were a poor investment. It did not work out for Fox. It doesn't look like it's going to work out for Netflix. And this is going to carry over, because moving forward, networks are going to start to shy away from doing a deal with the WWE in the future, which means WWE are going to be more reliant on their stadium shows. They're going to be reliant on that Saudi money. It looks like there'll be more shows in Saudi Arabia, and the deal that they are penning with Vegas to bring more WrestleManias to Vegas. But that's being met with a negative response by the fans. Fans don't want to go to Vegas every year. Vegas is ridiculously expensive, and there's going to be a ton of fans who have had the Vegas experience last year. Yes, they wanted to have it. Yes, it was very, very costly. And next year, there's going to be a load of people, far more than WWE are anticipating, who are going to turn around and say, no, thank you. Been there, done that, seen it, got the t-shirt, overpaid for the t-shirt, overpaid for everything, and I ain't going back to Las Vegas, especially with the poor taste they left in everybody's mouth when it came to that finish with John Cena winning the title, aided by Travis Scott. That's the last memory that people have of Vegas, and it's not necessarily a good one. And don't forget, WWE was struggling to shift these overpriced tickets in the first place and had to reduce the prices. So how are those people going to feel who paid mega money for those tickets in the first place and then saw their seats reduced down to a fraction of the price just a week before the show? You think they don't know? You think they've got their head in the sand? WWE are killing off their goodwill person by person, city by city, network by network. How do you think New Orleans feel about the WWE pulling out of New Orleans? How do you think Minnesota feel, but based on the fact they've been constantly rejected? How do you think Indianapolis and Orlando feel that WWE are going to them now, hat in hand, trying to renegotiate their deals because they've done a deal with Vegas and are intending to give a WrestleMania down the line to Saudi Arabia? How do you think London feels? And I don't want WrestleMania to go to London. I can't think of anything worse. I don't want WrestleMania in London. But London has been falsely promised, or at least they've been given false hope of a WrestleMania for years and years and years, not only by the higher-ups, but they've actually had wrestlers like John Cena go in the ring and tease a London WrestleMania. And I reiterate, I don't want it. WrestleMania is a break for me. It's a chance to get away. But it won't be this year because I will not be going to Vegas again. Because as I said, been there, done that, got the t-shirt. There's other events that I've been to Vegas for. I don't necessarily want my WrestleMania there, and I don't want it there in back-to-back years. If you're going to go back there in 4 or 5 years, fine. I was happy to go to New Orleans for 30 and 34, and I was really looking forward to going to New Orleans this year. But no, the priority is to squeeze as much money out as they can and to recoup this $3 billion debt by any means necessary. And that's what it's taking, by any means necessary. Firing whoever they need to fire, sponsoring whoever they need to sponsor, selling out whatever they need to sell out, and destroying goodwill wherever they need to. And that's what they've done to various cities. But goodwill is going to run out. This share price is going to come down. This bubble is going to burst, and fans are going to turn around eventually and say, no, fuck you. We're not going to pay these ticket prices. The product is poor. The storylines are non-existent, and we're not invested in anything. The star-making power of Triple H is limited at best. As I said, I could only reel off 4, maybe 5 stars that he's created and that have benefited from Triple H taking over creative from Vince McMahon. It's been poor. It has not been a successful tenure. Yes, he was able to ride that wave. As I said, the Bloodline were on TV. That brought eyes to the product. People were invested, and they were invested in people around that who would get involved. There would be new number 1 contenders who would try to dethrone Roman Reigns. On the side of that, we had the beginning of the Judgment Day, but even that now has become very, very stale. And we're looking at a guy who, yes, Jey Uso's in a better position. Yes, Dominic Mysterio's great. Yes, Rhea Ripley's a much bigger star. I love what they're doing with Jacob Fatu, and I would even make an argument for Liv Morgan. But who else could you really make a case for to say that they have benefited from Triple H taking over? Finn Balor, Seth Rollins, Roman Reigns, CM Punk, all 3 of the guys in that triple threat match? No, I would say that Triple H has not shown the ability to create stars. I would say much more people are in a worse position, which is concerning. I don't think the booking of even someone like Logan Paul's been particularly good. You saw Karrion Kross talking about how Logan Paul gets this and Logan Paul gets that. Logan Paul should be the world champion. Logan Paul is in a much better position to be a champion than a John Cena who can barely move and whose heel turn so far has been a massive letdown. Whilst Karrion Kross, a guy who looks the part, sounds the part, and has the support of the fans, continues to sit on the sidelines and in 4 months will be available for AEW to capitalize. Do I trust AEW to capitalize on that? No, because they failed to capitalize on every situation, and that really has been a massive negative, which has allowed WWE to make mistake after mistake because the competition seems to somehow make more. But Triple H, with all his experience in the business, should be far better at doing this than Tony Khan. And whilst The Rock did ruin his WrestleMania and ruined a WrestleMania moment for many of us, Triple H is not blameless. And I have absolutely no doubt with the way things are going, with WWE having to make these firings and having to cut costs and having to sell sponsorship and basically sell out everything, including their own soul, Triple H's head could be on the chopping block very, very soon if creative and Netflix viewership and SmackDown viewership as well, which is also poor, don't start to improve with them suddenly turning to The Rock. And if you turn to The Rock, you're going to get Brian Gewirtz. And it would not surprise me to see Brian Gewirtz actually running the creative for this company heading into the next WrestleMania. If not the next WrestleMania, definitely the one after that. So Triple H needs to drastically improve things moving forward. While people may be pissed off by the firings, while people may be pissed off by the sponsorship and the celebrities, at the end of the day, wrestling will always be judged by its creative. Wrestling's main pull is the on-screen product. And right now, the man in charge, Triple H, the on-screen product that he's delivering, that he's responsible for, quite simply isn't good enough.
Guys, I've been saying this since Rock poked me back in. He is setting Triple H up for the fall. Because at the end of the day, what happened at WrestleMania and the failure of WrestleMania and not seeing The Rock in the entire situation, guess who is responsible for that? Triple H.
Triple H.
Obviously, Coach, he's the guy in charge.
Triple H is absolutely the guy in charge of creative, which, as I said, is always the most important thing, as much as everything else will annoy you. The sponsorship, the firings, the celebrities, the ticket prices, everything else that TKO have done to ruin wrestling, the involvement of The Rock. Triple H is to blame for the week-to-week TV, and Triple H will be the fall guy. And I agree with Russo and Coachman and these predictions that they're making. I don't think he'll be in charge in 18 months' time if the numbers continue to go in this direction. WWE needs something big to happen. WWE need a big pull on TV. They need a new bloodline storyline. They cannot just go by week by week by week from WrestleMania to SummerSlam to Survivor Series and back round to the Royal Rumble, and it'll be WrestleMania again. And they haven't built any credible stars who can call themselves WrestleMania main eventers. This year, you felt like, he felt like Jey Uso would be ready to be in that position. But by the time the show came around, there was absolutely no way that they would have accepted Jey Uso and Gunther as the main event. So WWE probably did the right thing to go with that triple threat match, even though it made no sense on paper to have a triple threat match with no title on the line as the main event for no reason. But a lot of the stuff that Triple H has done and has been responsible for hasn't made any sense. There's been a number of storylines that have just been dropped or haven't continued, and there's the same things that we would criticize Vince McMahon for, the same things that we currently criticize Tony Khan for, you can now point the finger towards Triple H. So that's what I wanted to get off my chest. And that's really the reason why I haven't been podcasting or doing any content, because WrestleMania 41 left me 10 grand in a hole. And not in a hole because I could afford it, but it's not money I wanted to spend. When I look at spending 10 grand on those 2 weeks and where else I could have spent it on, such as doing my kitchen, for example, which is long overdue, it does seem like a very, very poor use of money. And to leave Las Vegas with that poor taste in my mouth, it made me very, very angry. My son was turned off by it. He's not watching as much wrestling now. And I'm sure a lot of people are in that same boat. We always have that post-WrestleMania feeling. But that's just because there was so much that went into WrestleMania. There's a drop-off in the product. You know, you see less people involved. Last year, we no longer saw The Rock anymore. Roman Reigns took his post-WrestleMania break. But this year, there's the actual bad taste of the WrestleMania. And that was the culmination of what was also a very, very poor build to WrestleMania. If you were to rate those builds for WrestleMania, what would you actually give more than 7 out of 10 to? Which build would you give more than 7 out of 10 to? That's a question I want to ask you guys. And I also want to ask you guys, do you agree with me or not? Are those 5 people that I mentioned, Dominic, Liv, Rhea, Jacob, and Jay, are they the only real 5 people who have significantly, and remember the word because it's important, significantly benefited from Triple H taking over. And who are the list of names who have significantly gone downhill since Triple H took over? People that Triple H has wasted that you might have felt that Triple H would have booked better. I'd be really interested to hear what other people have to say. There is no Wrestling X account for me, so the Instagram is at LockBetting. My other Instagram is at BillySGP, and there is a Dirty Sheets on TikTok, which is run by Austin, but there hasn't been anything posted for a while because, as I said, interest is down. But I'm back on the Informer. I will be dropping a news piece before Money in the Bank, and I've also done a Money in the Bank preview. It's a betting preview, and my betting previews are, as always, available over on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network on The Fight Show. That's it for me, guys. Thanks for listening.